Okay, I'm going to change a little bit of tact from this morning. This morning was very IT focused, very sort of futuristic, very interesting obviously, and a lot of stuff I personally as an environmental engineer don't really understand, but think, oh, okay, I better start getting my head around it. What I'm going to do in the 20 minutes that I've got, I'm going to bring this down to some case studies about a couple of offices that ISIS have done, because when it comes to sustainability, I'm the head of sustainability. I talk to a lot of sustainability type people, and in my circle, for us it's obvious. Yep, sustainability makes sense. Kind of why isn't everybody doing it? So one of the things I've done is I guess I've gone and asked people who aren't environmental people, who aren't sustainability people, why isn't it that green isn't the automatic choice in your next fit out? I mean, it may well be, but it isn't always. And a lot of people said to me, we don't have the data, we're not convinced. We think it's a nice to have rather than an essential. So what I set out to do is get some data around it. Now, there isn't a magic bullet, but we've done a couple of case studies that I'm going to talk to you about, and I think you'll find it interesting. So at the end of the day, buildings we all work in offices, or some of the time at least. We've heard a lot about how a future office is going to look. We've heard a lot about the technology in a future office. We've heard a lot about the people, which I guess is quite neat and quite a nice tie into what I'm going to talk about. And it is all about people. We work in an office, we work in a building because we need to talk to other people. Now, just obviously a couple of images up there. I'm kind of hoping you're not the guy, or you don't work in an office with a guy trying to hang himself by the tie. But we've probably all worked in an office like that at some point in the past. But I think fundamentally, in a sense, we're humans, we're animals. We need a certain type of environment to excel, and that's what I'm going to be exploring here today. Okay, so I think there's two key questions on green buildings that need to be answered. And I guess I'm an engineer by trade or by background, so I'm always very analytical about why we do things. Just because it's the right thing to do, at least for me, isn't good enough. So are green buildings good, productive places to work? And can this also apply to refurbished offices? Because that's also really important. Because, actually, here's the next slide. Not everyone can work in a building like this. There's a number of, this is obviously the ANZ building in Docklands. I know ANZ's speaking after me, so I thought I'd do a quick intro and plug for them, warm you up. But there's a number of Green Star, 6-star buildings around the country. This is just one I happen to bring up as a picture. But we can't all work in an office like this, well, at least not yet, as much as we'd like to. Some of us might be working in an office like this or a building like this. Looks like a 1960s building from some horrible building estate somewhere. And I don't have any photos of the interior of that building, but it's probably a fair guess that the interior needs a bit of a freshen up and needs a bit of an update as well. So let's examine about what it is like working in these buildings and what it's like working in once they've been refurbished and made more sustainable. So one of the things that I've done, again, differently for this presentation is that I'm not going to just talk about what ISIS has done. I've actually drawn across the range of body of information that's out there in the wider community. So I've got something that Colliers has put together. So Colliers has done a lot of good research. I think there's some people from Colliers here today. And the question they've asked that when they do their annual surveys is, what would you want more of out of your next refurbishment? And this is the sort of figures that come up. Improved team collaboration, more daylight, occupant well-being, environmental performance, and more informal space. A couple more questions. So what's important when attracting staff? So a very different question, but you'll start to see there's some consistent themes here. Good indoor environmental quality, public transport, daylight. And then another question, what are the changes to occupant expectations? And that's obviously people like you and me working in our own offices. Air quality has become more important. And increased environmental awareness. So if you have a look at, now I haven't brought up all the answers, but I sort of chose the ones that were more prolific and more important in terms of their responses. And you'll start to see that air quality is mentioned twice. I think daylight's mentioned twice. Environmental awareness. So you're starting to get a theme for what people want, and this would, I'm sure, be broadly consistent with what you would expect in your own office environment. So a little bit about ISIS and a little bit about how I've had the opportunity to come and speak to you here today. ISIS has taken the approach that we're going to make all of our office refurbishments Green Star. Now, Green Star is an environmental criteria. It's put out by the GBCA. Some of you will be familiar with it. Some of you won't. That's okay. But basically, all our offices, as they go through the process of getting updated or we're moving, we're getting a 5 or 6 star office interior certification. And we're doing that for a whole bunch of reasons, and it's not just the environmental aspect of it. It's not just about being energy efficient and having good waste management, albeit that's important as well. It's actually really about some of the soft measures and some of the people aspects. So employee well-being, very important. Then there's things like positioning. Obviously, we want to take a national approach. And another intangible as well is the fact that we want to future-proof the office. We don't want to have to go in there and do another refurbishment in 5 years' time because we realise we've sort of missed the boat and we've missed a few tricks. The other thing about we've found that going down this approach, actually some of you who are coming on a tour to see the ISIS office tomorrow will get a feel for this, is that by designing it in a certain way, which you'll see some photos of in a minute, we can actually use that space as a function, use the office as a function space as well. So there's a couple of other intangible benefits about having a well-considered, well-designed office that's basically accessible to yourselves as an organisation. So we've done a lot of Green Star projects, so we have a pretty good idea about sustainability. So we've actually done 40 offices around the country with a value of 175 million, and that's actually 30% of all Green Star office interiors projects around the country. And this is a snapshot of some of the clients that we've worked with. I think there's a few of you here today who have gone on and had certified projects. So really, that's sort of the background, and I sort of want you to have those couple of questions that I brought up at the start in mind when we run through the case studies. So we've done 2 case studies, and I've chosen our own offices, Melbourne and Canberra, because it was easier for me to access the data, and it was easier for me to get copyright and all those kinds of things. Sometimes you don't always have that opportunities when you do it for a client. But this would be easily done on your own offices. So we did a pre and post move, and we wanted to, we did an assessment pre and post move, and we wanted to ask these 2 specific questions. Again, I really want to try and analyse the data. I want to try and understand what are the benefits of a green office, or are they just sort of nice to have that you can afford when there's an upturn and you can't afford when there's a bit of an economic downturn. So do they actually increase occupant satisfaction? And are they actually good, which in senior management talk, productive, are they good and productive places to work? Okay, so here's a picture of the Melbourne office. You can start to see there's a strong design element to the fit out. That's upstairs. Again, for those of you who are coming tomorrow, you'll see this. So here are some details. It's an oldish 1980s building that was refurbished by us. The building was built early 80s on St Kilda Road. So you'll be familiar with, if you're familiar with Melbourne, you'll be familiar with St Kilda Road. Lots of kind of glass buildings down that way. It was pretty tired and pretty dated when we took over that space, and we effectively stripped it out and put in our new office. So it got certified to 5-star Green Star late last year, or middle of last year, and it was finished obviously in 2010, the actual office. So you'll see some more design elements here. You've got the green wall, which is something that's becoming a bit more popular. We didn't actually get any Green Star points for that, but we just thought it was something that was good to do because it really showcases the innovation and the sustainability aspects of this office. Interesting to see that internal stairs are becoming more fashionable. If you sort of take a straight economic or accountant point of view, you're sacrificing NLA to put in stairs, obviously below and above. But as a business, we took the decision that the connectivity that you get by having an internal staircase was much more important. So we had to cut out the concrete and put a whole lot of steel reinforcement around it. And what's interesting about having this kind of design is that it brings people together in that office, because it's a reasonably extended floor plate. But to get upstairs, you have to go through well, you can go through the lift, but no one does. Everyone goes up the stairs. So it has that way of circulating people through the office in a very interesting way. And just below that, there's actually the newspapers sit over here. So people kind of catch up on the news and see where they're going on a Monday morning in particular. So it really brings people together. We've got interesting meeting rooms. So in terms of having a stimulating and enriched environment, this is an example of what the meeting rooms look like. You can see, hopefully, it creates a lot of creativity. And then we've got what's really important these days in the employee mixing areas. So you've got the coffee machine, which seems to be the most important part of an office on a Monday morning. So everyone's up there trying their double shot, flat white, and sort of impressing each other with who can do the most interesting shapes in the milk. So people get together, they talk over coffee, they exchange ideas, they find out what's happening with tenders. So if you sort of cast your mind back to this morning's presentations, this is sort of, I guess, a an example of how that works, and in my opinion it works very well. Now, it's always good to look back and see where we've come from, because this is, you can only gauge it that way. So here are some pictures of the old Melbourne office. So you'll see there's nothing really wrong with these. It's a very typical, probably 1980s fit out, very plain plastering, very plain lighting. This is up here is the storage, the archive area that doubled as a change room. So there's a little whiffy if you needed to get some archive material. You'd probably have to go in, open the door, put some folders against the door, and then get the hell out of there and come back 5 minutes later. But we're probably either working in a place like this now, or would certainly have worked in a place like this in the past. Again, fairly standard kind of old office, not much storage. There's probably not a lot of thought into functionality, but in its own right, it worked. So you've seen the new, you've seen the old. Can you actually measure the difference in a quantifiable way? So we had it independently assessed by an external consultant. So we analysed the physical air quality. We had which is I guess a quantitative analysis. We had a qualitative analysis of people's perception to working in that space. We then benchmarked it against other buildings. I've had a look at sick leave, which is a completely different parameter. So I've had HR give me 3 years worth of data there. And then also too, it's really important to understand, I did this 12 months apart, because obviously if you move into any new office, you're going to get a tick up in results and productivity benefits or perception. So I deliberately waited 12 months before I did the follow-up assessment. So this is the results. Obviously it's sort of not really about tables and charts, but I'm going to quickly give you a couple of snapshots. One is that the air movement was a lot better in the new office. So you've got zero, obviously there is air movement, but in terms of draft. So the old office was very drafty. If you sat under an air conditioning vent, you'd sort of be freezing, and there are pictures. I know people would come to work in ski jackets, and then if you were away from that, maybe against the window on a hot summer's day, you were boiling. So it was really uneven kind of heat distribution. Carbon dioxide has dropped, and that's one of the key parameters for stuffiness. Interestingly, carbon monoxide has jumped up, and that's because this building is right next to Queens Way and Kings Road, and so you do get a lot of trucks coming on and off the Westgate Bridge there. So it does show that even though it's obviously fine and well below guidelines, it does show that there is an interplay between the outside air and the inside air. VOCs, or volatile organic compounds, and formaldehyde, massive reductions as well, primarily because of the Green Star specs. We've put in low, good quality components. We've also got pot plants, you've seen the green wall, and additional fresh air. One thing to note is noise has kicked up slightly. It's still within guidelines, but if you are planning to go open plan, be very, very mindful of how you manage acoustic noise. So you need to have lots of breakout areas, and you need to have lots of open space to sort of manage that. But you can see physically, this is just a snapshot in time, but it's an independent, so the scientists came around with some weary instruments, assessment of what people found. So sort of moving on, this is the perception now. So this is the old office. So you probably can't see that, but I'll just read them out. So you've got thermal comfort at 12%, which is consistent with my experience. Air quality is at 32%, so quite low results. And an overall building satisfaction of 27%, so not very satisfied in other words. This is the new Melbourne office, and this is people's perception of working in that space. You can see a massive improvement, a massive increase. So that whole design component and the actual effort that we've put into improving the air quality definitely kicks up and is definitely noticeable. And this, as I said, after 12 months of being in that space. So the whole wow factor is kind of gone, and this is just how people find being in that space. So you can see air quality has improved to 92%, thermal comfort's increased to 53%, and you've got an overall building satisfaction rating of 92%. Very, very significant improvements indeed. So the second case study is Canberra. So I wanted to know, was the Melbourne office a fluke, or are these results repeatable across the country in different offices and different environments? Again, this is a newer building. It's targeting 6-star design. So we're actually targeting a 5-star design. We're targeting a 6-star rating for the actual fit-out space, and that was completed last year. So a couple of pictures again. You'll see there's a very strong design element to the fit-out. Lots of interesting spaces. This is the internal area, a bit of a breakout area, which is what people have these days. There is a coffee machine there in the background. And then this is a typical example of the workspace. And you can see over there that there's a nice little breakout area for people to pop into so they can make their phone calls and things like that in private. So, and this is an example of the old office. This is a real photo. This is a gentleman by the name of John Patterson. You can see it was taken back in 2004. And this is what it was like. And again, this isn't really a bad office. For those of you who know Canberra, it's on Northbourne Avenue. If you look from the outside, it's actually not a bad-looking office from the outside. So it just goes to show how people's perception of what's in an office has really changed and how our expectations have become more exacting. So let's have a look and see if the occupant satisfaction ratings sort of match up for the two different offices. And you'll find that they do. Very, very poor satisfaction in the old office. Thermal comfort down at, what's that, 12%, which you'd expect from the previous picture. Air quality down at 20%. So very, very low scores indeed. Now, what do we find in the new office? Again, a huge increase in satisfaction. And you can start to see that why that would be the case now. So you've got air quality's jumped to 90% satisfaction, thermal comfort's at 77% satisfaction, and you've got an overall building satisfaction rating of 97%. So they're even better than the Melbourne office. There's a bit of interstate rivalry there. So huge, huge uplifts in performance. So we've also gone and benchmarked that office. And as I said, the study that we did is actually an international study, or I should say. It comes out of the University of California, and there's 500 different buildings and offices that have been benchmarked against this study. And so the new Canberra office actually ranks in the top 90% against 500 buildings internationally, whereas the old office ranked below 30% in most categories. So you can see the improvement. It's also, both offices have got a neighbours indoor environmental quality rating, IEQ. They're actually, I didn't know this until a few weeks ago when I got on the neighbours website, but they're actually the only two offices as opposed to buildings in the country to get an indoor environmental quality rating. So, so it's quite significant, and we're seeing the benefits, and I guess that's why I'm here talking to you today about some of the benefits of going down this road and doing these assessments. So in terms of sick leave, this is a different set of data. This is just something I've got out of HR. And so I just kind of wanted to talk about this because it's something that people always ask me about. So this is the drop from year 1 to year 2. So you get the pre-move, year 1 and year 2. Now I've done office-based employees, and then I've sort of benchmarked that against site-based employees to see if there's a difference and see what's going on. And in fact, you can see the difference right there. Sick leave has actually dropped by 10% from moving from the old office into the new office, whilst at the same time site-based sick leave has gone up. So that's kind of like the general community, I guess. So you can clearly see that it's improved. Let's have a look at Canberra. Do those results stack up? And in fact, they do. You see again a 7% decrease in sick leave. So very consistent, not so consistent that I'm suspicious, but certainly consistent, and there's a very broad trend, and there's a clear evidence that good quality buildings are better for the people in them. So how does that translate to productivity benefits? I haven't got a detailed analysis of that yet. That's one of the things I'll be working on this year. But our own estimations in the research I've read talks about a 10%, sort of 4 to 10% increase in productivity. And that's from thermal comfort, better environment, better, more daylight. And you tend to get a 1% improvement as you improve each of those categories. And then there's that whole feel-good factor. People like coming to work in a well-designed office, so you get a productivity uplift from that as well. Now, another bit of research again, which I always like to see if what we're finding concurs with international research. And we had a gentleman out in Australia by the name of Craig Knight, Dr. Craig Knight, and I had the pleasure of going along and hearing him speak. And he's finding productivity increases of 17. He's a psychologist, so he sets up very kind of formal analysis in particular offices. Done a lot of work in London. And he's finding 17 to 32% uplift in productivity from what he calls an enriched office. So that's basically pot plants, nice furniture, good design. Whether that's good design or not. But you're starting to see a very consistent pattern with this morning's speakers. And the other thing he's found, which actually we didn't talk about this morning, was that organisational citizenship improves. So people feel better about working in a good office, so they're actually nicer to each other, believe it or not. So they're more likely to take on those awkward tasks and help each other out and work more collaboratively. He wasn't expecting that, but he's done 8 different studies, and that is a consistent finding. So I guess in conclusion, I think I am bang on time, which is good. If we go back, a sustainable office, does it stack up from an economic point of view? Does it stack up from an occupant satisfaction point of view? Does it stack up from a HR point of view? And I think it does, and I sort of wanted to take you on a journey today. It can be, firstly I should point out, it can be achieved in an older building. You don't have to go into new build to do this. It will increase occupant satisfaction. Like I said, we've done 2 different case studies, 2 different offices, 2 different cities. Very consistent results, which gives me a lot of confidence, and it does very closely correlate to international research. The improvements can be measured, as you've seen, and it does seem to be more productive. Thank you very much.
Riccardo, thanks very much indeed for that. Really good to see some data being applied to changes. So, yeah, challenge to actually get some real metrics out of these things. You know, what's important to one company is different from another. You need to try and identify what's important to you and try and identify where you are now, as you've done, Riccardo, and just have a look at what those deltas have been. And then you get a sense of value from the work that you've done there. So thanks very much indeed for the presentation. That was great. Thank you. So, 2 more presentations to come now. First of all, we're going to have Rosemary Kirkby, who's the Head of Sustainability for GPT. Rosemary is, I'm sure, is well known to most of you. Following her will also be Robert Hitchcock, who's a Project Director from GPT. So I think we'll get a sequence of flow from the groundwork that Rosemary will do in her first presentation. And she's going to be referring to a number of case studies in Australia, just to look at how improved engagement and governance can actually make a real difference in sustainable delivery and, you know, for sustainable development and also socially sustainable communities. So, Rosemary, up onto the stage, and welcome and look forward to the presentation. Thank you.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I realise I'm talking mostly to the converted this afternoon, but some things I want to say apply more broadly to our industry in general. And my aim this afternoon